Hey folks, I'm back. So here's the deal. Um, by the way, I have the sunglasses on because I have the typical circles here from being just totally sleep deprived. But so here's the deal. I've had situations here with my boss. I've tried posting a video. The thing is, Horvat won't let me post live videos. Um, the situation with my boss is that she's bringing up that I'm late to work. Um, she doesn't understand anything actually. She already knows that I'm late to work. I had to go out and sign a contract for another job here, doing papers, which is what I already do, but an extra job that's done on Saturdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. And the point is, she brought up, well, we can't give you this because you're so late to begin with. And of course, she knows that I'm late. I don't know if she knows it's because of technology. I assume at this point, Horvat is told the truth about this. I guess Horvat knows I'll speak out to my boss anyhow. And the point is, I was talking to my boss on the phone, and I know that she thinks I was trying to bamboozle her. And I couldn't understand why she's bringing this up, except in the last month here, I've been made extremely late. They've been affecting me, and I've been waking up after 6 o'clock, and I'm supposed to be done at 6. And the point here is, I was bringing up with my boss. I ended up calling her back. I had my journals. I told her I'm going through my journal entries here. Yes, I was late on this day and this day. I just flipped through a few pages, and I know that it's just hard to believe people's viewpoints. And the thing that pissed me off after speaking to my boss the first time on the phone is that she thinks she's got the real situation here, and she's screwing around making stock. And I already know that she knows that I am late. I already get that she gets that. And she's bringing up that these situations here for the last month where I've been really late. And I'm not telling her. Why would I? Um, First of all, my boss doesn't know what the situation is to begin with. As to how I'm kept awake at night, how I am sleep deprived, she has no idea of the amount of torture. Punct and period. That's point number one. Point number two is that she already knows that I'm late. As she said it when we went out to sign this contract. My girlfriend came also so that she could interpret things. And the point is, my boss said when we were out there, she brought that up that I'm late. We can't give you this other job here because you're late all the time. So you understand what I mean? And I brought up technology also on the phone, by the way, the second time. And the point is, my boss thinks I'm trying to squirrel my way out. And the point here for me is she's making a dumb stalking thing. She's been told by Horvat certain things, and she's believing that. And the point is, what I was going to, I went through my journals and I said, well, I've been late here and here, and other days as well. And I'm speaking about January and the fact that they've made me really, really late. I'm awake late. And the point is, this is it. The point is, my boss already knows that I'm late to begin with. Presumably, she knows why. Because it's real easy for me to tell my boss this. And in fact, I went out this past Saturday. I was going to I was going to speak to my boss. I went by her office, and they would not answer the door, and they've been told I'm coming by there. Well, Horvat doesn't want me clarifying a damn thing. I was going to go out and talk to my boss and say, look, every single time I'm late, it's because of them misusing technology. Punct and period. I'm the kind of guy that likes to get things out of the way. I don't like it hanging over my head. And this way I clarify everything. She can make her stalking bullshit. I'll just ignore it. And the point is, then she knows, and then there is no argument. She can say whatever she wants till the cows come home, but I know that I've made it clear for her, and therefore she's got no excuse. You understand? Uh, She has none. The other end of it is Horvat typically lies to everybody I deal with. Everyone. Everyone. Horvat always has to be one up on people, and she always has to be lying to them and burning them. This is Horvat's total MO. They get cheap kicks and thrills out of being this way. Again, it gets down to Horvat being an egotistical psychopath. They're all this way. But of course, Horvat's calling the shots here. And so it's good that I clarify things like this, but obviously Horvat told my boss to not answer the bell when I rang at their office. Quite obviously. And the thing that pissed me off about my boss is that she thinks, well, I'm trying to lie to her about my being late. No, I just see the whole thing as being really stupid. And I was bringing up the times I was late, but I'm bringing up the times that I'm really late because I don't know if my boss has been told the truth about that. And then they're laughing. I know my boss is making something behind the scenes while I'm speaking to her colleague on the phone the second time that I spoke to them at the office. And she's laughing, her colleague on the phone here, because I know my boss is making shit here. And no doubt my boss has been told, well, he's trying to lie. And this is what burned my ass after I spoke to my boss the first time. I knew that she did not believe me and thinks I'm trying to weasel my way out of it. And she said, well, why didn't you call this time when you were late? And the real reason why is that for years on end, I've been calling her when I'm late. But the problem is they make problems with our phone. And when I'm out on my paper route trying to call my boss, these agents make it take 10 minutes. I'm already late, and that eats up 10 minutes of my time. So I finally, if you want to argue, I've been conditioned into doing it. I finally only began calling up afterwards. And then later, I was like, well, what's the point in my telling them then? So I just typically don't tell her anymore. And the point is, I know my boss doesn't know any of this. She thinks that I'm trying to be, quote, smart here and get away with lying to her. And that's the whole point. She doesn't get that I get the bigger picture to begin with. She is locked down on a smaller perspective, not me. And then she's laughing at me while her colleague's on the phone talking to me. And I know that because her colleague was laughing. I could tell her colleague's looking at my boss. And my boss is a dumbass. That's the point. And she thinks she's smart. Let me explain it to you this way. She and her colleague, once somebody from agents and agencies wakes up and investigates, contacts my witnesses, and finds out this is all real and true, I get a small list of people. I'll say to agencies, look, you screwed up like crazy. You don't want problems with me? It's real simple. You just put these people on this list and stalk. It's real simple. And then we'll see how funny my boss and her colleague think it is, because they're doing stalking and screwing around with cheap bullshit. And I'm being tortured and attacked and affected heavily while trying to get this agency information packet done. All the cassette recorders are being screwed around with. Take a look at this. Take a look. This is ready for shipping, and I have 3 more of these. 3 more. And what do I tell you? I've got more important things to be dealing with than my boss's ignorance. And what really happened here is that my boss thinks she understands me and she knows what the real level is. And in reality, she's being played like silly. She's being totally manipulated and lied to by Horvat. Just absolutely unreal. My boss and her colleague are just absolutely ignorant and stupid. Horvat made a setup in February of 2013 where my boss and her colleague could have been killed if Horvat had affected me with technology. And it was a setup. Horvat was mocking them and saying to me, look at what I can do and look at what I could get away with. And again, my boss and her colleague, totally stupid. If they understood that Horvat and her officers created a knife attack in our neighborhood in February of 2010, then they wouldn't be laughing at all about it. And then furthermore, they're screwing around making their bullshit with me, interrupting my life, and then furthermore, being tricked and manipulated by Horvat and her officers. and then laughing at me, and in reality, they're the ones who are clueless, ignorant, and stupid. So, of course, that burns my ass. And then Horvat doesn't tell people like them what it is I'm really angry about in the first place. I'm being tortured and attacked and affected all of the time so that I cannot get my agency information packet done. And they're bumping me out. Hang on. And the reality is, I'm trying to get these people caught. They are murderers. They've tricked agents and agencies. And while I'm doing the job of agents and agencies, and while I am being a responsible citizen here, people like this are taking a piss on my intelligence and where I'm really at here and what it is I'm trying to get done. And they are interrupting my life with their dumb bullshit. You understand? So that's my piece about my boss and her colleague. They are absolutely stupid. And sorry, boss, if you're looking at the video, I got news for you. Every word of this is true. And you know, what do I tell you? You just have not been very intelligent here. And as a result, this woman likes to use you and manipulate you and trick you even more. And then laugh at you. Yeah. She knows what the deal is. I do. They know what the truth is. You and your colleague do not. And hey, you know, what do I tell you? That's all real and true. Where did you think I would be at after 20 years of dealing with agents and agencies? It's not on this dumbed down level that Horvat and her officers have been selling by affecting me heavily. So now, folks, what I want to do is get into a tape here, and this is very important. What you'll notice is that on the days where they don't affect my ability to think normally, the way I normally do with my ability to analyze, to be logical, this is an important one. I'm a very logical person when I'm not being affected. So they affect me in regards to this 24/7. And it's been going on for the last few years now, since 2010. I rarely get to be myself, excuse me, but what makes these cassettes important, this one here and following ones, it's part of 3, is that they're not attacking and affecting my intelligence, my ability to think logically the way that I normally do. No feeling of confusion on me, on top of it, them blocking these first 2 points and affecting them. What do I tell you? And as a result, these cassettes are good and right to the point, which is normally how I am. So finally, I'm going to let it get to this cassette, and this really gets into Horvat and her officers, the cover-up, and if you're an agent, if you're from an agency, you really need to be taking a look at this information. This is the stuff that Horvat's hiding. So anyhow, here's the cassette, and then I got to go back in the bathroom and record, make copies of cassettes. And again, they've been attacking these cassette recorders very heavily. I have 4 up here, and they've all got to be shipped off to this company for being repaired. And in reality, they don't have problems. They're just being affected with technology. But if I don't go through the motions here, Horvat's not going to let the cassette recorders work. They have to, quote, be fixed. Eats up time, energy, and money. And again, Horvat's taking a piss on agents and agencies. Because what's it really about? It's about slowing down my getting this information packet done so that they have enough time to cover up all these points I'm bringing up on cassettes. Because there are certain days now where they're taking the technology off of me because Horvat wants to find out where their holes are. And they're worried. So then I get to make good cassettes. And then what they do is they shut down my cassette recorders so that by the time these cassettes get to people, they have stories for covering everything up brought up on the cassettes. This is what it's about. They're attacking my cassette recorders is about not being caught. It's about their cover-up. And then they're saying, oh, well, we've only tricked him into believing we're killers and dangerous, and therefore he only believes that there's a cover-up. He's been tricked into believing it. No, that's Horvat and her officers being right in front of your face and laughing at you. Bold-faced lying to your face. And that's you being dumb enough to believe it because of their job title, because of their skin color. stupid. It is the skin color of their job title. People are going on dumb, cheap stereotypes, and technology being misused heavily, right in front of your faces, and then them bold-faced lying to you. That's exactly what that is. So finally, here's the tape. About stories and lies Horvat sold to agencies. Horvat mocking people from agencies, mocking people I have had contact with. Horvat affecting me in front of their faces, and they don't even know it. And this tape is about these stories, how technology was misused, and how Horvat has gotten away with misusing technology on me in front of people's faces, and furthermore has mocked people all the way. Horvat has lied and affected me heavily in front of people's faces, and she has mocked people all the way. So this first soundbite is about the Creepo coming out on May 21st, 2012. So here it is. The 21st of May, I have written down 2 Creepo agents drop by. Now, this is important because Horvat, obviously, and I picked up on it when they were at our flat here, it was just me and my daughter, and these guys showed up at the door. They showed up at the door, and I'm going to get into the story here. Horvat had been threatening for weeks having the police come up to our door. I said, knock yourself out. I said I could care less, and I began mentally preparing myself for that happening. And we had police out at our house out in North Carolina many times. In fact, I called them many times, and I had a cassette recorder right out in the open. And I take the police out there, dealing with my mom drunk and hostile. I take many of these. Hello? So this idea that I'm going to be shocked and awed by people showing up at our doorstep who are with, police and agencies here, you can't forget it. That has no effect on me. Furthermore, I was mentally prepared for it. So, hello? And I told myself, okay, as somebody shows up at our door, first thing I can do is ask to see their identification, and I want to write down their names and their badge numbers, period. So as these guys show up, and I had that as a mental marker in my head. These guys show up at the door, and they just whacked me with technology from the very beginning. Before I even got to that door, they started affecting me very, very heavily. Although that wiped out all of my mental markers. They'd seen that I'm prepared, I have an order, a way of doing things. If people come out here from agencies, and that just wiped out my mental markers. My first videos on YouTube are with illustrations of how Horvat wipes out mental markers. This is why. This has been going on for so long, so heavily, and so extremely with me and my family. Of course, the first videos I'm posting are about this, of course. Back to the tape. Very, very heavily. And sure enough, I didn't ask for, their identification so I could write down their names and their badge numbers, not at all. And that's my first requirement. I want that information documented before we go anywhere in terms of speaking. And then what did Horvat do? She just affected me heavily the entire time they were there. And I did not begin to be myself, not at all. Not in the least bit. And this guy Rothstein was, I'll get to the story and how I got his name in just a little bit here. But he kept bringing up the number 3, and he kept bringing up America. And every time he'd bring up America, I would get blipped out for 10 seconds at a time. He'd be speaking to me, and I couldn't hear a damn thing. I got sucked in with this technology. Horvat officers were bombing me right in front of his face. They were bombing me with quick questions, and then doing something else really weird as well with my emotional states. And again, that involved a computer program, obviously, that was word activated. Another point, Horvat affected me right in front of Rothstein, right in front of both of them, and got me to bring up that my mother's an alcoholic. They quite literally scripted that out of my mouth, and I had my what the hell was that? And I didn't intend on saying a damn thing about that. I was totally out of left field. They totally scripted it out of my mouth. And for about 5 seconds, I was quiet in front of Rothstein because I was thinking, what the hell was that? My first thinking was, why did they just do that? And what are they up to? And then I was thinking, well, this came out of my mouth, and he's not going to understand that this was done with technology. And I was thinking, well, how the hell do I continue a conversation with this? I got to try and make it look like it was mine. And for a good 5 seconds, right in front of his face, I was quiet. And he said something to me like, your mom drinks or something. And you know what I tell you, I was just speechless for a good 5 seconds because it wasn't mine. And for some reason Horvat did that. And obviously Horvat did that for a reason, for lying behind the scenes. I'm not stupid here. This is the way it's been for years on end. As a quick point here, you have to keep in mind that I was half expecting somebody to show up at our door based on everything Horvat was communicating to me and based on knowing her. You have to keep in mind my own perspective here. Horvat and our officers are guilty and they're easily caught. That's another point I was saying to Horvat and our officers. If anybody comes out here, I'll give them copies of cassettes for agencies. There's a lot of important information on these cassettes, even though they were spiked. They affected me the first time around, and I didn't even remember to do this. It's just absolutely impossible. There was no shock and awe here in having these people up to the door. You have to understand the circumstances. I'm not the one in trouble, and neither is my family. Horvat or officers are. And you have to look at this from Horvat's perspective and the chance they are taking by doing this. And, of course, at that point in time, by the time the creepo came out, Horvat had watched me mentally prepare, looked at what it is I would bring up, what I would say, how I would act, and what I would do. And by the time the creepo got out there, what do I tell you? Horvat was prepared, and they affected me in regards to every single point in terms of how I would react and react naturally and what I would say and say naturally. And quite literally, they affected me so that I did not begin to be myself. And why? They knew how I would react, and they simply affected me differently in regards to all these different situations and points when they came out. And it all started at the door. I was not writing down their names. I was not asking both of them for identification, not writing down their names and their numbers. And that's just the very beginning. Back to the tape. And for some reason, Horvat did that. The next point, after they left, Horvat and our officers let me remember I was going to get identification and the name. I went running downstairs, and they're in the car. They were about to leave, and I asked, "Hey, what's your name?" And, I asked them to write it down. And the only one wrote down his name, and normally I would have asked for both. And I also would have asked for a badge number, so I was still being affected. They only let me function partway normally. And Horvat got away with everything. I got totally affected in front of their faces. I didn't begin to resemble myself emotionally or mentally, not at all. And they had no way of knowing any different. This is why I don't get affected as heavily, and like this when I'm on the phone with my mother. I just would smell a rat. Hello? And getting back to the point, he kept bringing up the number 3, and he kept bringing up America, and unless I'm mistaken, he brought up America 3 times. Well, what's Horvat doing? She's playing around with the number 3. On May 3rd, they told me the number 21, like that has to do with something around the end test time. So on the 3rd of May, I had them tell me 21. Then on the 21st, we have creepo agents. And there are correlations like this all throughout my journals and my calendars. You see a clear system of innuendos. You see their style and how they do things here. Other things as well. You see how they misuse this technology for giving signs and innuendos as well. Typically, they will affect other people we have contact with when they're affecting me at the same time. Now, the next point. I was so pissed off at how heavily they affected me when these 2 creepo agents were out. It was like being on heavy drugs. It was like being in touch with a bay of foul all over again. I got so pissed off, within 24 hours, I began writing an email for the creepo and to send to officers. And Horvat and officers weren't happy about this because I was exposing how they had affected me with this technology. And they quite literally erased the email and drafts of it, and it never got sent off because they kept affecting it heavily. They take the technology off of me. I realized it was affected. Try and go back and correct it. It just get more and more affected, more and more spiked. And they also sat on my willpower and desire to get it done, to finish it. And now what I'm going to do is read part of an email here that I wrote. It's a draft one, and it wasn't for the for the creepo. It was for somebody back in America. And I wrote this in May of 2012 after they had been out here. And as a point, as I look at this, the email is in fact spiked, and this was the problem I was having in sending off the creepo an email also. And what they did is they affected me in regards to writing this email, and no doubt I sent some version off. I have no idea if I sent the spiked version off or not, but I would imagine that they affected me and got me to not realize that this email was affected to the point that it is, because they were worried about this guy. This guy's familiar with technology. He's back in America, and of course, Horvat was spiking very much my material to him all the way. So I'm going to read parts of this, and as a point, very much of this email is about Horvat threatening to break up my family, and how I know she's going to try and do this. The other end of it is, it's also about the creepo being out here. So I'll cover both points. First thing I've written down is, this is a reference to agents and agencies, by the way, when I say the word they. They have no idea of what my issues and my families are. We are tortured and traumatized daily by agents and technology. How invisible and subtle do they think Horvat is being here? If it was them and their families, it would be just as obvious. This next sentence is a reference to the creepo being out at our flat on the 21st of May. Furthermore, I was affected heavily with techno right in front of their faces, just like with everyone else, and it is uncomfortable to have this techno profile forced on you, and they were clueless. I had and have copies of tapes I could have given them. Spoke of making and having cassettes, yet did not think to give them a single one. This does not begin to be me. If they had been given some cassettes and listened to them, this would have been the beginning of the end for these agents. To say I was affected heavily, thought blocking, into not thinking of this is an understatement. These cassettes are for agents in the first place. How hard is it for an outsider to see the truth of this? And again, those cassettes were spiked, but what do I tell you? Horvat officers were still worried about the information on those cassettes, because those cassettes, regardless of them being spiked, still exposed lies and stories which Horvat had sold to agents and agencies back in the day. These of tapes I could have given them. Spoke of making and having cassettes, yet did not think to give them a single one. This does not begin to be me. If they had been given some cassettes and listened to them, this would have been the beginning of the end for these agents. To say I was affected heavily, thought blocking, into not thinking of this is an understatement. These cassettes are for agents in the first place. How hard is it for an outsider to see the truth of this? It should be as obvious as it is. Again, techno. And this bullshit is not my fault, yet Horvat is lying about her techno behavior. Her choice is made with it, and I'm getting the blame as she blames me for techno behavior. Same as always, because these people do not want to deal with the reality that I and my family live with. And again, that was another thing. I was telling Horvat, if you have anybody come out to our flat, I'll give them copies of tapes. In fact, I was looking forward to doing that. So quite naturally, when these two creepo agents came out, they were affecting me, doing what I call thought blocking. And of course, I didn't remember to give copies of cassettes at all. Now, this next part's about Horvat and Horvat holding me in. The story is, the next day I was making cassettes for agencies. And when I brought up these two guys from the creepo, Horvat affected me very heavily with instant technology anger. I had this going on all the time in 2012. And I'm yelling into the cassette recorder. And like I'm really, really angry at him, and that didn't begin to be my viewpoint. And unless I'm mistaken, I got held in for that on the 22nd of May. Because then Horvat had a bunch of citizens out there making a bunch of noise. We had sirens, the whole 9 yards. Typically, that's Horvat's sign that I've been held in. And you know, I don't trust Horvat's mouth when she does stuff like that. I'll wait many days until I'm sure. And that's what I did. Finally, by the 25th of May, I was sure that they had held me in. So that's what this next part is about. She obviously sold that I'm stressed about their innuendos, and the reality is I could care less. Yeah, I was held in reverse scripting, along with, quote, forgetting that it was a possible last day. And in the morning, I had strongly thought that it was the last day, yet this got erased and bumped out. And I had a piece of paper, too, in the bathroom for reminding me. They, Horvat officers, simply block my observations of these reminders, which I make in the first place because they make me forget. In other words, after I write stuff down and put it where it'll be right in front of my face, right in front of my family's face, and then they just affect me and my family so we don't even notice it. Just totally opposite how we've been for years on end. I've been putting up for years on end pieces of paper on the bathroom door. These days on the toilet seat side of the bathtub, you know, it's near an end test. We have to watch out for mops. And, you know, many times I'll even write down what it is I think that they may do.
Horvat and officers with this technology. Yet these days, all throughout 2012, 2013, I could tattoo us with the end deaths and the possibilities here, and we wouldn't notice it anyhow. The point is, it's right in front of our face, and we don't even notice it. And it's because we're being affected. And again, the point is, Horvat affected me when I was making these cassettes, just like that. Snappy fingers affected heavily, and I know I got held in for it. I've written down Horvat was simply prepared to hold me in with techno, same as always, and did so, same as always, and used two agents of an agency for their cover story, along with lying about my profile. She obviously sold them stress about her innuendos, and this is a laughable joke, and Horvat knows it. And again, by the way, I sent many emails off to this guy in America, and the point was, when I began making cassettes for him, Horvat was affecting me with high levels of technology anger towards him. I finally got sick of it, and I sent him an email. I said, look, you're affecting me with high levels of technology anger in regards to you. I said to him, how much sense does that make? I'm asking him for help, and I got sick of it. I sent him an email. So then Horvat stopped affecting me, with techno anger and, technology for making me angry at him. And what they did is they began affecting me at high levels of paranoia and other things instead.
And Horvat did that with agencies as well. She was using the same tactics she used for tricking agencies for affecting me and tricking this guy back in America. And because they were worried about him, because of his background, and because of his familiarity with this technology in the first place, they never expected me to get through to him in the first place. There's a whole story about it. I had to blindly remove parts of my email because they were affecting it heavily and affecting my ability to recognize what's mine and what's theirs. And in the end, I had to cut away large pieces and blindly send them an email. It's actually how I did my second book. And I got through to it. And they were totally worried. Of course they were. Back to the tape.
Giving me high levels of paranoia and other things. Instead, for discredit. There's another sentence. Last time I checked, I contacted them because of agents committing murder. Yet these people have not even figured out that they are considered the good guys. And yes, I am seriously irate, irritated with the Bekia, because they have been clueless and stupid. So I am irate with them based on reality. Yet I, of course, consider them the good guys. That is the point. And Horvat has them divided and conquered over mobbing, which is non-existent as an issue. And this would be clear if German agencies got the level of torture being committed with this technology. They've not done a damn thing to find out the truth. In the meantime, they bought into techno emails, which were meant to sell them a profile typically associated with mobbing from when I was in contact with the BFL. And the point is, this is how Horvat and our officers affected me when these two Creepo agents were out also. And again, Horvat's just reconfirming techno manipulations and misusing people from agencies for doing it. They've done this very much this year in 2013. I've been affected right in front of people from the BKA. October, November, July, you name it, many times. So getting back to the Creepo here, another sentence. So they've been sold stress due to innuendos of these two clueless agents. So here's another part. So as usual, Horvat is mocking people and I get fucked. Agents are absolutely clueless to reality and my viewpoints. In other words, my real viewpoints, not technology.
And again, Horvat is watering down my real viewpoints by affecting me heavily when I am in contact with people with technology viewpoints. And then Horvat is selling that as being the real me. And this is to discredit my personality, what I really think. And furthermore, it's to hide the truth in the fact that I know what I am speaking of. In other words, okay, you see, this makes sense, but then you see the other 50% is kooky and crazy, and that's what Horvat wants. Since it's kooky and crazy, and since Horvat is lying and saying that's his, therefore you do not believe the other 50%. And in reality, she's affecting me heavily in front of everybody's face and then lying about it, and people are being dumb enough to trust her in the first place. My first email to the BFA was about attempted murder with this technology. And there's a whole story here about why I did not bring up Betina's mother from the very beginning. It's on the history tapes. When you understand my real personality, my real viewpoints, you understand that it is impossible for me to have behaved the way that I have and to believe the, quote, things that I have believed here. And you realize that Horvat's affected me heavily with technology for tricking agents and agencies. Furthermore, Horvat has lied and mocked everybody all the way. Horvat and her officers affected me very heavily and got me to put a sign in the window saying, Horvat, you will be caught for murder. And by the way, I doubt that she could have read that from her flat. But the point is, Horvat affected me and had me do this. I even wrote a letter to this guy back in America about this, and they affected me and got me to put the sign in the window. It's on the history tapes. And what do I tell you? We've been through all sorts of hell and high water here. You see, all throughout my calendars and my journals, Horvat is appearing out on the street next to me and my daughter after traumatizing us heavily by misusing technology heavily. Horvat gets no reaction from me because she's let me be myself. Yet, Horvat here, when she needed it the most, had me putting a sign up in the window. And what do I tell you? It's because they were worried about this email I was working on for the Creepo and Rothschild and his colleague. They were worried about that email to begin with. And because it was exposing how I was affected when they came out. And furthermore, I realized my emails being affected in spite here, and I began blindly removing pieces, and it was getting shorter and shorter instead of longer and longer like Horvat wanted. And the point is, Horvat discredited me before they could even get that email. That's the point. And they affected me heavily and got me to put that sign in the window, in the kitchen window, because they needed that to discredit me with Rothschild and his colleague before they got the email. That is why. And then Horvat sent them out a second time. Then they let me remember, Horvat and her officers, to offer him tapes. He wouldn't take the tapes. He was being ignorant. He was being thick-headed. And I'm tired of this. Just because it looks that way, it does not mean it is that way. I was affected heavily in front of their faces both times. And they got played, they got manipulated, and they got suckered. And Horvat and officers had them saying, do it for your family, do it out of love for your family, think of your family. And then they had our neighbors say the same damn thing. And Horvat was mocking them. Look at the history tapes. It's all about doing it for my family. It's all about love of my family to begin with. Look at the history tapes. My girlfriend obviously knows that Horvat and her officers are in trouble. And then Horvat is telling the Creepo and our neighbor to say this because she is taking a piss on them. This is Horvat's personal message from her to me. Look at how I've tricked these people. Look at what they don't know. And look at what they've chosen to believe. She is using them for delivering personal messages. And at the end of it, I was saying to Rothstein and his colleague, I was saying I'll have to post videos on YouTube. And I wasn't making a threat against agencies. I was making a statement about how serious the situation is and that they need to be looking and finding out. And instead, they got tricked into believing I am kooky and crazy. Yeah, I have years of journal entries and calendar entries of Horvat doing heavy things to me and my family. And then she's out there a day or two later, and she gets no reaction from me. Horvat gets no reaction. And because they're letting me be myself.
If I'm delusional and I'm mistaken, I would have been attacking Horvat in the first place when she's out standing next to us. That's the point. Back then, and even now, there has been and is a real psychology in regards to myself that Horvat is hiding. Again, if I'm delusional, I would have been attacking Horvat for all these years here if she had been coming out, standing out next to us. It's back to the tape.
And she gets no reaction from me. Horvat gets no reaction. And because they're letting me be myself. Yet they were worried about this email to the Creepo. They affected me heavily. And that was for discrediting me with the Creepo. And before Rothstein and his colleague got this email about me being affected heavily the first time they came out. And look, folks, it's real simple. I expect people at agencies to get this stuff. This is being done in terms of tactics and strategy. It's being done, look, when you get their motives and that they're actually in trouble here, when you get that my girlfriend and my daughter are major witnesses here, then you get that they are in trouble, and you get that they are misusing this technology strategically and affecting me heavily and my family heavily for getting away with their cover-up. It's real simple. And just because it looks real, it does not mean it is real. And that's the reality I and my family live with. We've been affected heavily. If I shoot you with a gun, you bleed. If I shoot you in the head, you die. It's real simple. It's the same damn thing with this technology. There's no being delusional about it. And we've been affected, and we've all seen everybody else be affected. And furthermore, we've all dealt with it so much, we recognize when it's being done to somebody else in the family. And furthermore, because we know what our real profiles are in the first place, which Horvat has absolutely lied about for years on end to begin with. Horvat has been misusing technology from year one and lying about it from year one. And the history tapes settle that beyond any shadow of a doubt. But these guys from the Creepo they don't know me. They didn't recognize a damn thing. And they're just going on looks and lies that Horvat has sold. They're in a lot of trouble here, Horvat and our officers. They have no problem misusing this technology and lying to people's faces. Furthermore, you look at the history tapes, you realize this is how Horvat is to begin with. She likes lying to people's faces and being heavy and extreme and being right out in the open and getting away with what she is doing right in front of people's faces to begin with. In this first email to the Creepo, to Rothstein and his colleague, this threatened to expose them. I showed him a copy of my blood test, everything checked normal. He saw this, and I was telling him, look, Valium has not been working. I was saying, have you ever heard anybody being immune to Valium? This is what I say to everybody. And the point is, it proves that I've been affected, and affected heavily for someone's stress profile I don't have. I showed him other things as well, and this guy was halfway questioning. I don't dislike the guy. In my opinion, Horvat and our officers felt threatened here, of course. And I got pissed off because they affected me heavily when they came out. He kept saying, if you had 3 things to say about all this, what would you say? And then they would affect me, Horvat and our officers, and I couldn't bring up 3 points to begin with. It's not because I was flabbergasted. I would have said, well, did you verify things? Did you contact witnesses? Did you find out what is going on? It's real simple. The cover-up's been gotten away with because nobody's verified a damn thing, and because it all looks so believable to begin with. But what do I tell you? Simply because somebody is affected with technology, it does not make it real. You go to a Steven Spielberg film, Jurassic Park. Do you believe that's a National Geographic film, or do you know it's special effects? Well, it's the same thing needed here. And those guys got tricked and they got played. Furthermore, they still affect my memory in regards to this. I think what they've done is they've removed the memory blocking in regards to this particular point by about 50%. But I'm sure that Rothstein was standing in line behind me at Aldi, and I turned around and I eyed him up and down, and that is my way of letting you know that I know that you work for law enforcement and that you are there because of stalking. And I would have brought this up from the very beginning, the first time I saw him. And Horvat was taking a chance here. She did not want me bringing up all sorts of things with these people when they were out there. Furthermore, I was affected, I was affected heavily, and I did not begin to be myself. I'm typically calm, cool, and collect, and Horvat has to affect me when I am in contact with people for selling a very different story. It's real simple. And that's finally why I got my blood tested twice. My blood came back normal both times, and the second time I specifically checked my cortisol levels and vitamin B deficiencies, which, if you have stress, it just eats up your vitamin, your B vitamins. And I had a couple other things tested as well. It proves I did not have a stress profile. It's real simple. And I did this because Horvat only affects me at key moments in my dealings with people, whether it's my doctor, whether it's with people from the Creepo, our neighbor who is with the Bay Camp, you name it. And these blood tests prove that I am only affected at key moments with people and for tricking them. And behind the scenes here, yes, at our house, we're affected all of the time. It's mind rape, it is torture, and Horvat's lied about all of it. Horvat has been selling, quite obviously, that many times when we're affected with technology, that it is real, and that's a total lie. And that's on all sorts of cassettes I've made here. Horvat's lied all the way. She's been bold and brazen. She has affected me and my family heavily and lied right to people's faces. And that's exactly what they did to Rothstein and his colleague from the Creepo. So now here's another soundbite. And again, this is about Horvat's lies and stories here. Am I being affected heavily in front of people? Here's another soundbite from another tape. This is about Krista Kuhn. The story of Krista Kuhn is that she worked at Schlecker, which is very close in our neighborhood to where we live. She's with German agencies, of course, certainly with German law enforcement. We were good friends with her, I and my daughter, and she had no idea of what was going on the entire time. Of course, for years my daughter was asking me, why don't we speak to Krista Kuhn? And I was telling her, I'm not ready yet. This has to be prepared. She doesn't understand what's going on. And the point is, there are multiple stories on my history tapes about Horvat mocking Krista. And the point is, they were very worried about Krista. And they got away with selling technology behavior as being mine to Krista. And the point is, if you let Krista in on these cassettes, you let her in on the information packet, excuse me, but it's my belief that she will catch on to Horvat here, and she will catch Horvat and her officers. Horvat and her officers and Krista are just total opposites. Krista is much more similar to me than she is to Horvat, of course. She is one of the better people and more confident people I've dealt with. And the point is, her lack of knowledge of this technology was her downfall. And the point is, if you let her listen to the information packet, you let her look at the information I have provided, and simply based on her integrity and the fact that she's professional, what do I tell you? She will catch Horvat and her officers. Her downfall was she did not understand anything about this technology. And you'll hear this over and over throughout cassettes. This goes all the way back to the very beginning in 2012 when I was making cassettes. You let this woman, Krista Kuhn, in on how this technology really works. You let her listen to the sound bites, recorded conversations with people. You let her in on all the information. You explain to her how this technology works, and she will catch Horvat and her officers. Horvat and her officers were very worried about Krista, which I believe is one of the reasons why they neutralized Krista from the very beginning. You listen to the history cassettes, you realize they did not want me contacting agencies to begin with. You realize this had been going on for years on end, of course. You look at how dumb my mother has been here. You'll hear this on recorded conversations with my mother. I mean, there are things that from the very beginning agencies get that my mother does not. And the point is, Horvat did not want me contacting agencies, yet she has let me contact Krista, and Krista first. And the point is, Horvat easily could have affected me so that I gave nothing to Krista to begin with. It's real simple. And this is in late 2010, by the way. They were saying to me, I was saying to them, well, I'll tell Krista what you're doing. I'll tell our neighbor, what have you. And they're saying, well, we'll trick everybody one by one, and we are going to do this like dominoes. And sure enough, that's what they did. And the point is, Krista knew us. She knew me and my daughter very well. If she had known the real circumstances to begin with, she would have understood that there's something wrong here. And I got affected heavily. I'm handing out copies of emails to agencies, to the BFL. I'm handing out copies of my first book. I did not know that my first book was affected heavily. I did not know that my emails to agencies were affected heavily. And in reality, Horvat and our officers, you listen to the history tapes, they're affecting me in regards to Krista and our neighbor. There's no way that I would be hostile towards Krista. It's absolutely impossible. And you listen to the history tapes. But the point is, Krista lacked the knowledge about this technology to begin with, and as a result, she got tricked and manipulated. The other end of it is, I got affected heavily, and Horvat was lying to everybody's face. And the point is, if you let Krista in on all of this now, what do I tell you? You let her listen to the information packet, she's going to know there's something wrong. You let her listen to recorded conversations with my daughter, she ought to know better. I didn't make my daughter delusional. This shit's been happening for years on end. Horvat and our officers were worried about Krista because she is competent and she has integrity to begin with. And furthermore, they were twice as worried based on the fact that Horvat knew me. Horvat affected me heavily and then lied to Krista's face. It's going to be a little bit different if you let her in on the information and then she finds out how she was lied to begin with. I mean, Krista, of all people, ought to know that I love her and that I wouldn't lie to her. And furthermore, she ought to know that I'm not delusional to begin with. She should have known that to begin with. Horvat quite literally was using Krista for traumatizing me and traumatizing me heavily simply based on how much I love this woman. It's real simple. Horvat traumatized Krista and traumatized me and absolutely mocked Krista. And if you let Krista in on this information, what do I tell you? I still have faith in her. And Horvat and her officers were worried about Krista, and they wanted to neutralize her from the very beginning. I have no idea how heavily my first book and emails were affected. Look at the history tapes. It's real simple. My mother and my girlfriend can confirm this and verify this single point for you, point and period. Never mind everything else my girlfriend knows and my daughter. So here's a soundbite. It's a recorded soundbite from another tape, and this is about Krista. And take a look at how Horvat mocked Krista. Horvat was laughing all the way in regards to this. Horvat was absolutely rubbing it in my face. Krista's the one person who would be helping us the most, and she would get to the bottom of everything. She would get Horvat and her officers caught, and yet she's taking a piss on me, Krista, and she doesn't know what the truth is here. She doesn't begin to. It was like Krista stabbed my daughter in the back and me. And Horvat was rubbing this in my face the entire time and the entire way. So here's a soundbite about Krista.
This woman, Krista Kuhn, who I bring up throughout cassettes, if she were to hear this material, she would catch on and she would smell a rat. She would know that there's something wrong here. She had a whole hell of a lot more integrity and far more competent than this agent in charge from the Bekia, our neighbor, and all these field agents was dealt with. And that's the other end of it. Krista knew us better than our neighbor and all these other people who have screwed up like crazy. And between that and her integrity, her competence, her intelligence, her being thorough, she's perfect. What do I tell you, man? Out of, more than 20 years dealing with agents and agencies, she's one of the better people. Horvat and her officers were worried about her. Listen to the other cassettes. They were scared by Krista. And the point is, she would get to the bottom of things, whereas these people from the Bekia haven't gotten to the bottom of a damn thing.
Krista is like me. She's Mrs. Business. She's not stupid. She is competent. She has enough sense to double check things, to be thorough. And again, her weakness was she did not understand this technology to begin with, and she could not understand how heavily it was being misused to begin with. All she saw was a bunch of hostility, viewpoints, in regards to me, in regards to her, my viewpoints of her, and these were not my viewpoints. That's the point. I was being affected heavily, and this involves my first book. And she saw this, and she thought, wow, he's going crazy. And Horvat's telling me, well, this is all his, and she believed it. But nobody had the relevant information to begin with. That's the point. Agencies never received the information they should have received from the very beginning. And this is all on my history tapes as well. So here's another soundbite about Horvat's lies and cover stories and hiding our real viewpoints, mine and my family's. This is also about Horvat affecting my first book.
What do I have to be angry about? There are solutions in the story. And again, this was my attitude. It was my family's attitude. We all thought this was going to end. It's obvious to my girlfriend that Horvat has done all sorts of things and lied about it. It's absolutely obvious to me as well. And my daughter, of course I've been forced into speaking to her, but of course, she knows that also, like me and my girlfriend, Horvat officers are doing things and getting away with it. And the point is, when I was doing my first book, my attitude was they're caught, and I know it, and they're going to be caught, and I know it.
It's the same attitude I've had all throughout 2013. Yeah, I've been affected heavily out in public, and quite specifically in front of the Bekia. And once again, Horvat's affected me heavily, and lied just like she's been doing from year one. Look at the history tapes.
And I know it, and they're going to be caught, and I know it. And they affected the tone of my first book. Never mind emails to the BFL. They affected the tone. They affected me heavily with technology anger when I was close to finishing. And they quite literally got me to redo my book with all this techno anger on it. Then they affected me all over again and gave me this idea for weird punctuation, weird quotation marks, and weird capital letters, and got me to redo my book all over again. And again, my attitude was they're caught. And my book was in far better shape before they affected me heavily. And the point is, you listen to sound bites with my mother, you hear what my real viewpoint has been for years on end with my mother, and my girlfriend will also confirm this. I've been all about trying to pass stalking, and strangely enough, I can't pass. I've been speaking out all the way to my mother and girlfriend about technology being misused for holding me in. Again, hello? And furthermore, my attitude was they are caught, and my book was not angry. Of course, I like any writer, you write a book that you want to read. I don't want to read a book full of anger and hostility. It's just ridiculous. Just from a business point of view, and in terms of thinking of strategies for selling books, I wouldn't do it to begin with. Never mind my real attitude and viewpoint for years on end here, which my mother will confirm and my girlfriend. And furthermore, you can listen to sound bites with my mother. You hear me saying, did you read my first book? And you hear me say to her, you would be surprised. And why? Because my attitude in my book is totally different in regards to my viewpoint and my attitude towards German agents and agencies for years on end. That is why. It is proof of what I'm saying here. And my first book is totally opposite of how I've been with my mother for years on end here in regards to German agents and agencies. So if you want proof, there it is. I couldn't be justified in my being angry with agents and agencies because they had no way of knowing what the truth is. That's the point. And if you want proof, then that cassette will go a long ways to opening up your eyes. You hear me saying this to my mother. You don't hear her denying it because I said it so many times to her.
And again, my mother's stupid. She has believed Horvat's lies. But for government agents and agencies, I expect them to ask my mother questions and say, well, was he always speaking of German agencies in terms of them being the good guys and catching Horvat and her officers? The answer is going to be yes. Was he always saying to you that Horvat and her officers are doing things that they will be in trouble for? The answer is going to be yes. It's real simple. And my mother was stupid. She believed Horvat's lies. If she looked at my first book, she believed quite obviously that that was me. And again, I don't believe she looked at it at all because I just don't expect my mother to be so stupid. But the point is, you call up my mother, you ask these questions, and then you look at what I am saying in the real stories here, which my mother has never heard. She's never heard very much of this. She's heard key points, but again, she's stupid. But the point is, for agents and agencies, when you find out the truth, and you hear my mother confirming what it is I am saying here, you're going to realize what my mother did not, because my mother is an idiot. She's believed Horvat's bullshit all the way here. But the point is, agents and agencies will know the truth, even though my mother does not. It's real simple. It's one day of phone calls, folks, to find out that Horvat and her officers have been lying to German agents and agencies all the way. Back to the tape.
You don't hear her denying it because I said it so many times to her. And again, my first book is just totally different than how I've been for years on end. And that's the point. It's just totally opposite. My first book, and then you realize emails to agencies are totally different than how I've been in regards to my own attitude and viewpoint with German agencies and German agents. That's the point. I couldn't be justified in being angry with the Bakian or anybody else because they had no way of knowing because they had no independent monitoring. What do I tell you? I'm fair and I'm just. It's just like respect. You have to earn it. Anger is just like respect. I have a system in place for dealing with people. It's been in place since I was a teenager, and you have to earn my anger just like respect. And again, this soundbite goes totally against what Horvat's been selling to agents and agencies. You speak to my parents, you speak to my girlfriend, you'll be absolutely shocked at what you find out. It's totally opposite than what Horvat sold to the Bakia. That's the point. So finally back to the cassette. What do I have to be angry about? There are solutions and a story. And again, the fact that Horvat is caught, the fact that Horvat and her officers are guilty, the fact that I know the difference. I've dealt with other agents in charge of stalking, many different ones. I could note a difference in stalking styles. I noted a difference in stalking styles between the last agent in charge and Horvat. I knew somebody else was in charge. And I know what's acceptable and what isn't for agents and agencies. Yeah, I get that all sorts of things are acceptable in the name of stalking. But it's the volume, how many times Horvat is doing things, and how much that I know Horvat is lied about. That's just tip of the iceberg. And of course, I know what the difference is. And of course, I'm grounded by reality. I know they are in trouble, and I know they're caught if agents and agencies investigate. That's the point. I know it. My girlfriend knows it. Horvat and our officers know it. So back to the cassette. Our solutions and the story, it is because of people like my neighbor and agencies, clueless people, that I and my family are in danger. That's what I have stress about. Not mocking. Again, I'm not foaming at the mouth about it, but they have earned their commentary based on their incompetence.
And the whole story here is, I was not foaming at the mouth. I was not angry with German agents and agencies. I was fair and just about this. I knew that Horvat was misusing this technology for years on end. Again, listen to the history tapes. Is what I and my girlfriend both realized. Horvat had been selling a very different version of reality, a false one, to German agents and agencies to begin with. I listened to the history tapes. And I cannot be justified in being angry with the BKI. Not at all. I cannot be justified in being angry with anybody. And that's what sound bites with my mother prove here. Again, you call her up, you find out what my real viewpoint was, what I had said over and over to my mother the entire time. I was telling my mother they're stopping my book for cooking up a fake file, for doing a cover-up with German agents and agencies. My mother was stupid. Of course she was. She had no idea of what was going on. But, you know, what Horvat was selling to my mother would not trick German agents and agencies. That's the point. You find out about this history bit by bit. You're going to find out that Horvat was building a cover-up here, preparing for a cover-up all along the way. They stopped my book for 2 years for coming up with all of this, and in preparation for agents and agencies. Where do you think the cover-up is going to be when you're talking about trained spies here, doing a cover-up in regards to spies and agencies? It has to be outside of your box of thinking to begin with. It's real simple. And again, I was not angry with agents and agencies. They had no way of knowing the truth, and I realized this. I realized in 2006, it's been real simple for Horvat. She's been misusing technology heavily. She's been lying to the BKI all the way here. And again, I was thinking in terms of Germany's version of the FBI, because that's who I dealt with to begin with back in America. Again, it's real simple to understand my viewpoint and where my viewpoint comes from. Yet Horvat has lied about all of this. You listen to the history tapes from 2006, all the way up to 2011, I was almost calling up the BKI. I'd even have a phone in my hand, and Horvat and our officers would affect me and get me to not do it. And because they were not prepared. And again, it's all about Horvat and our officers doing the cover-up. It's real simple. I had no justification in being angry with German agents and agencies at the time that I wrote the BFL emails. And at the time that I did my first book, I was grounded by reality here, and Horvat and officers affected me heavily with my first book as a way of laying down the groundwork for the BFL and as a way of preventing radio interviews in case agencies screwed up to begin with, because Horvat and officers saw that was my backup plan. They saw me contact somebody from the alternative media in 2009, and this woman was open and receptive to doing an interview. She said, finish your book and then contact. So Horvat screwed up my first book, and then they affected my emails to agencies, and they lied about it all the way. Yet my real viewpoint was based on reality. I had no reason. I cannot be justified in being angry with agents and agencies because I knew that they had been tricked all the way, and I understood it. And of course, my viewpoint with BKI at this point in time is totally different, based on them affecting me heavily in front of BKI agents and then lying about it on a last day of stalking, killing a third pet.
Okay, so I've got to flip the tape and do another video from that. So that's it for that video. I want to add this here. I don't know if you can see her. She's a real stinker. Let's see. Take a look at this. That is our cat, folks. This is upside down. Got her head upside down there. Hey, you. Mouse! Yeah, hello. Okay, folks. So that's it. I had to add that. That's it. And I'll be doing another video here with the tape. Right now, by the way, they are making me feel very, very sick. They typically do this when I make cassettes. Cassettes are making cassettes, doing this agency information packet It's a torture session every time. Typically, I'm reverse scripted also. That's another thing. They've done a lot of emotional states, not mine. This has been the really, really big one that they've been doing lately. A lot of heavy, emotional states, not mine. They haven't been doing anger. They've been doing other things. And it's been about interrupting my cassettes. It's different than them spiking my cassettes with technology anger, which was their big thing in 2012. It's been very difficult, but anyhow, they've been making me feel very sick here. This has been going on real heavy for the last year. They make me throw up on my paper route. Also here at home, and it's just been real heavy and intense. In fact, it was only a few weeks ago they had me throw up on my paper when I first got it. And that's what they've been doing here today. So, all right, on to the next video.